What if a famous historian, non-Christian, outside the Bible source, wrote about Jesus? Today we're going to be talking about Flavius Josephus. He was a first century historian, scholar who wrote about the history of the Jewish people in the first century, but including the church and also Jesus. Join us as we read the works of Flavius Josephus. Welcome to another Bible passage. It's great to be here once again with you. It's always amazing to dive into the Bible, into these Bible passages. Today is going to be a little bit different. We are going to have a Bible passage. It's going to be in John, but we are going to be reading from an outside source. It's from the book of Josephus, Flavius Josephus. And it's going to be so interesting. When we get to it, you won't want to miss this. Keep hearing because it's amazing. But before all that, thank you for everyone who keeps watching, who keeps coming back, for all the comments. I've gotten comments from everyone saying how this has been so helpful. And honestly, it's helpful for me to dive into the Bible, to share, and to be able to dive deeper into a topic. We've done so many topics before. If you have any topic in mind that you would want to listen to or hear or dive into, put it in the comments. What topic is it that you would like to hear? Also, if this is something that has been a blessing to you, share it with somebody else. Send it to somebody, send it to them right now. Say, hey, listen, so-and-so, this is a great teaching, and send it to them. Because if it's a blessing to you, I'm sure that it will be a blessing to someone else. With all that being said, we're going to dive into today's topic. Flavius Josephus is who we're talking about today. Now imagine this. In the first century, there was writing. People did know how to read and write, but not everybody. The common people didn't know how to read and write. It was very difficult to have books. We now have books all over the place. We have the internet. You're probably holding your phone. You could go on the internet and read. We have libraries, but it wasn't that readily available to read. People did know how to read, but not everyone. So being a scholar, being a historian was something that was taken very, very serious. And only very few people did it. And when they did it, they were the most uphold. It was like a top thing to be or to do, because not everybody could do it. It was only like the very few, very rich, and very far in between. So I'm going to give you the history of Josephus a little bit. He was born Jewish. He was a Jewish person, and he was most likely from a linear priest. He studied Judaism. He went to different schools. At one point, he was put in command of a Jewish battalion, and at that time they were battling the Romans. This was at the time of Jesus. Well, Jesus had already been crucified and resurrected, but this was after that, sometime after that. Now, Josephus, just to let you know, when he lived from the year 37 to 100 after Jesus. So therefore, he was just born when Jesus had already gone. So this is the time frame that we're talking about, okay? So he had just been born, and these things were still happening where Jesus was taken, he had resurrected, he had left, and all the turmoil was still happening, because remember, the Romans were still there. They were still tormenting the Jewish people. Nothing got resolved. Pilate was still there and doing things, and the Roman Empire had a foothold on the Jewish people. At some point, they give Flavius Josephus a battalion, a little army battalion, and he's supposed to fight the Romans, but he gets captured. Once he gets captured, he gets taken into the Roman army, and little by little, he just integrates himself. He gets out of being a captured slave. And actually, because he was smart, he was able to write. He actually started becoming a historian for the Romans. He started working for the Romans, not because he wanted to, because out of necessity, he was captured and they didn't let him go. So he started becoming more and more known as a scholarly writer for the Romans. Now, the Romans back in Rome, very far away from Israel, just like today, when things happen around the world, we want to know the news. But back then, they didn't have a radio, they didn't have TV, they didn't have internet. So how do we find things out? Well, we need historians to write things down, write it in books, and give it to people, write about the events that are happening, and give it back to the Romans who are back home. And this was the job that Josephus was given. He was given the task of writing the events, and not just the events the current events, but also the events that happened prior, all leading up to the destruction of Israel. Because if you remember, the Jerusalem was destroyed the year 70 after Jesus. It was destroyed. And he lived through that. He lived through that time. So he was there. He was an observer. Part of it, he was actually there as a participant, but he was an observer. And after he became known, they actually gave him like a free media pass, where the media press pass, they give him a pass and they're able to go into the White House, or they're able to go to somewhere where the regular people aren't able to go. Well, that's what Josephus was. He was like a press pass. He could go and in and out, interview people. And that's what he did. And he did several works. The first one was The War of the Jewish People. That was a book that he wrote, and it was a big hit with the Romans. The Romans liked the book so much. Once again, I know that it seems to us is like a book, a history book to read, but to them it was current events, just like if it was like we were watching the news, because they could not watch the news. So to them it was almost like recent events, recent current events. And then after that, he also wrote a second book, Antiquities of the Jewish People. And then he wrote several books after that. He wrote a biography. He wrote many books for the Romans, specifically to the Romans. He wasn't writing to the Jewish people. He wasn't writing to Christians. Another backdrop of this is that at that time, remember that Romans were not the Christian yet. At one point, Romans became Christian and they took Christianity as their main religion, but this was not the time yet. That did not happen until the year 300 AD. For many years that would not happen. For another 200 years that would not happen. So he was writing to people in Rome that were not Christian. He wasn't writing to Jewish people. He was writing specifically to the Romans, so they could understand what was happening in the area of Judea and the Jewish states. Here we go into a little bit of the reading. I had to give that whole backdrop of Josephus, and here is his books. And this actually book is a compilation of several of his books. It says the complete works of him, and I am going to read to you. And this is amazing, really, really amazing. So I know it's a Bible passage segment or series, and we will read the Bible. But I was led to read to you this right here from Josephus. It's an outside Bible source, but it's a historian that wrote about this. I'm going to read you just a little bit of line, just for context. And this is in the Antiquities of the Jews. And it says, "But Pilate undertook to bring a current of the water to Jerusalem, and did with it a sacred money, and derived the origin of the stream from a distance of 200 furlongs. However, the Jews were not pleased with what had been done about the water, and many 10,000s of people got together and made a great clamor against him." I'm going to pause there. This is talking about Pilate. Remember, Pilate was the one that had Jesus and washed his hands of Jesus. That is who he's talking about. And what's happening here is that it seems that Pilate made some kind of water aqueduct or way, but the Jews that were living there were not happy about it. He was the governor there. He was the overseer there. Rome sent Pilate to oversee this place, and he needed to keep peace. He needed to keep the Jewish people under Rome, but at the same time, he did not want them to revolt. So it was like this delicate balance that was happening. And we're not even talking about the Pharisees and King Herod. We're not even talking about them. But just with Pilate and the people, there was like this kind of tension. And this is the tension that he's writing about. And we keep reading. There was the soldiers surrounded them. The Jewish people kept doing protests. I'm not going to read you all that, because if not, I mean, there's a lot to read here. But here is the part that I want to get to, okay? And I am going to go slow, because I'm sure that you don't have this. I can't say go to the Bible passage, because this is not in the Bible. This is an extra source outside the Bible from a historian that wrote about this. And it says here now there was about this time Jesus, a wise man, if it be lawful to call him a man, for he was a doer of wonderful works, a teacher of such men as received the truth with pleasure. He drew over to him both many Jews and many of the Gentiles. He was the Christ. And when Pilate, at the suggestion of the principal men among us, had condemned him to the cross, those that loved him at first did not forsake him, for he appeared to them alive again the third day. As the divine prophets had foretold, these and 10,000 other wonderful things concerning him, and the tribe of the Christians, so named from him, are not extinct to this day. This right here is an extra biblical source of a first century historian writing of the first century church, but also of Jesus himself. And he is an observer of the things that are happening. He calls Jesus the Christ. The Christ is the Messiah, is a translation of the Messiah. And he calls Jesus, he is the Messiah, and many followed him. After 3 days, he was able to resurrect. And the Christians, that group that follow him, are not extinct. They're still going until this day. This section right here was written in the year 92, the year 93 after Jesus. It is an amazing source that we have of a historical person writing of Jesus. A lot of times we hear where people say, the Bible, how can we know it's true? It's only the Bible. Do we have another source? And I'm telling you right now, I'm sharing with you the works of Josephus. Flavius Josephus is alive and well and has been recorded. And once again, it's an impartial person writing this as an observer, as looking from the outside. And that to me is an amazing resource to have just for yourself to build faith. You know, Thomas doubted. Thomas said, Jesus, I'm not going to believe. I need to see the sphere here. I need to see the holes in the hand, the holes on the feet. And Jesus was the next he came up, Jesus allowed Thomas to see that. He said, Thomas, you could come and touch me. I am here. And Thomas believed. Thomas said, I believe you are truly the Messiah. And here's the response that Jesus said. He said, Thomas, you believe because you saw. But blessed are those who without seeing have believed. And I believe that Jesus was talking about you and me, because you and I, we were not there. I was not there at the year where Jesus was crucified, when Jesus was resurrected. I physically was not there. If any of us, if you were there, if I was there, I mean, we were extremely old. There's no way physically possible that we would have been there. But we believe, because we believe the stories that are in the Bible. We believe the Bible is true. And now we have even an outside source. Well, it means it's been here for all of our time that we've lived on earth. But it's been here. Now we have it. We have it available. Look it up. Josephus, the works of Josephus, the antiquities of the Jews. Now, this is a Bible passage reading. So I did not want to go without actually reading a Bible passage. And for today, I'm going to read the epistle of John, the first epistle of John. This is John the Beloved. He's writing this. He writes several epistles, and he's writing the first epistle. And I'm going to read chapter 1 and a couple of verses here from 1 to 3. If you want to follow along, if not, I know that a lot of you just listen to this or hear this on your way to work or on your phone or when you're doing something else, and that's fine. I do that also when I hear other messages. So you could just follow along here. It says, that which was from the beginning, which we have heard, which we have seen with our eyes, which we have looked upon, and our hands have handled, concerning the word of life. The life was manifested, that we have seen and bear witness, and declare to you that the eternal life which was with the Father and was manifested to us. That which we have seen and we have heard, we declare that to you, that you may also have fellowship with us. And truly our fellowship is with the Father and with his Son, Jesus Christ. This is the word of John, that he was a first witness. He was there at the time that all these things happened, that the Gospels happened, that Jesus was here. He saw these things happen, and he's declaring these things as being true. He wrote them down, and his words have been kept for almost over 2,000 years. It has been kept for us to be able to read it. In another instance, we can go over how the Bible came together. The Bible is a whole set of books. I know we have it as one book, but it's actually several books put all together. And this epistle of John was kept. And I believe that it was a divine intervention, that God was able to keep it all these years for us to read this part, where John is telling us, a first witness person is telling us that he saw these things, and he's telling us what he saw in order for us to believe and have fellowship with Jesus himself and to bring us closer to him. It's an amazing thing. Now you say, or some might say, how can I believe that the Bible is true? Well, we have a secondary source today even. There's so many reasons why. There's archaeological evidence, historical evidence, eyewitness evidence. Personally, the reason that I believe John is because I know that John and the apostles, they all died for what they believed. They believed this to be true. And they died for that. They died. Correction, John, the apostle, was the only one that was not killed as a martyr. He did not die as a martyr, but he was also tortured and put in prison for his beliefs. And the apostles were willing to do that, to sacrifice themselves in order to keep going with his gospel. Nobody does that. Nobody does that for a lie. People only do that when they truly believe that it's the truth. And this, once again, the Bible is true. The archaeological evidence that we have discovered throughout the years is true. And also now, as we read, we have some historical documents, scholarly writing that we can have to build faith and to share with others. Thank you all. That has been the Bible passage for today. Talking about this is amazing. Amazing topics. We could go so deep into the Word of God. We leave you with this thought of just keep going, keep reading, keep going forward. No matter where you are in life right now, God has a higher level for you, a higher purpose. We can never see it all, ever. And here's the thing, we will never be able to see it all. Whenever we see a little bit more, there's always more that God has in store for us. We just have to keep going. Keep doing the right thing, keep serving God and serving others. Thank you all. Blessings, and I'll see you in the next one.